Hello everyone, welcome to CultureTalk, where we share insights and learnings from leaders in arts and culture. Today's guest has sat on both sides of the cultural sector as a supplier building websites for venues, and now inside one of the most interesting and eclectic arts organisations in Belgium. I'm joined by Karel Lievens, Digital Strategist at Viernulvier in Ghent. Viernulvier isn't your typical single-purpose venue. It's part concert hall, part theatre, part nightlife venue, part restaurant and bar, part monument, and part artist residency, all run as one team under one roof. We'll get into just how unusual that setup is shortly. Karel's route into this role says a lot about how varied a career in the sector can look like. He's trained as a historian, specializing in the Industrial Revolution, a period that fittingly produced the very building Viernulvier now occupies. He started out at 16 volunteering at a small venue in Eeklo, Belgium, eventually becoming its sound engineer and all-round jack of all trades, managing everything from production to the website. From there, he moved into data-driven cultural marketing at Public in Brussels, before spending 2 years selling and building cultural websites for Peppered, which is what we used to be called, so now Cult Suite. So full disclosure, Karel is a good friend of Cult Suites. He then spent 7 years leading the marketing team at Bayloka, Ghent's classical music and jazz venue, where he oversaw a complete overhaul of their membership and ticketing model, a project which we'll dig into later today because the results speak for themselves. And 4 years ago, he joined Viernulvier as the first ever digital strategist, a role built specifically to help the organization navigate the aftermath of a complex rebrand and bring some technical rigor to how it manages data, ticketing, and its website. So let's get into it and hear more about Karel's work in the sector, how he's helped organizations he's worked for grow, and what we can all learn from his experience. So for anyone who's not heard of it, how would you describe Viernulvier?
Well, I tend to describe it as an arts center that manages a building that's way too large for an arts center. So to make use of all the rooms, we have a very broad program. Includes theater, dance, but also concerts and nightlife and talks and a heap of rental events. So it's a big place.
And last time you spoke, you gave me a sense of the striking history it has. You said it was built by a socialist cooperative as a kind of palace for the working class. Does that history still shape how the place is used and how people feel and connect with it?
Yeah. The front of the building has engraved facade that says feestlokaal, which means the festivity hall for the workers, and it's a big part of our mission to offer a broad space for the audience to have fun in. So what we're doing today is literally what it was built for in 1913. Yeah.
And that must create some kind of complications for your programming and management of the venue. You once told me that you called it 4 different companies under one roof. It's catering, it's building management, it's venue rental, and the artistic program. And it's something that many venues might feel familiar with. And it's something that I've often referenced as to why cultural institutions have such unique challenges. But how do you and the rest of the Viernulvier team manage that? Does technology play a role at all?
Well, I think the challenges that at Viernulvier are certainly similar to how other venues and organizations operate. Um, Everyone has many different jobs to do. Some organizations will organize tours and run tours as well as host shows, which is very different businesses in practice. And at Viernulvier, we don't have tours, but we limit ourselves to supporting touring artists and offering them a venue and a residency platform. So with us, it's more about managing all the activities with the different partners in one program that needs to fit into that building. That's also a historic monument. So, and technology-wise, I try to approach the digital strategy side of things very pragmatic. and try to give colleagues involved access to just software that makes their lives easier, while keeping an eye out to avoid double content and automating connections between the systems where possible.
And I know you joined partly to help navigate the aftermath of a complex rebrand for the venue. What was that process like? And is there anything from it other venues could learn? What were the immediate priorities for you when you joined?
Well, luckily I wasn't there during the whole rebrand ordeal, but I think a lot of the people underestimated how strongly the audience felt about the name. And a lot of people were kind of angry with the political party that chose to take the name of the arts center, and they felt like someone was trying to steal their memories from them, from their good times over there. So from a digital strategy perspective, I think my biggest concern when I came in was keeping the SEO performance up to speed, because if you change your name, it's bound to impact that. And even now, we see about 50% of the Google searches that lead to our website use the old name. So we actively promote a double brand to counter that. Like, we are the Arts Center Viernulvier, but we're still at the Vooruit building. So people don't have to feel bad when they say I'm going to Vooruit, because it's still true, because we're still in that building. And I think you really need to put both names into your online content as well, so your SEO keeps accepting both entries to your content.
Some listeners might not have picked up on the exact nuances there. As a historian, can you give us a bit of background on when you say that people were unhappy about the name change? It was a socialist party that originally.
Yeah. So the original name of the building was built by a cooperative organization that tried to improve life for the workers during the Industrial Revolution, and but this was long before socialist parties as political parties even existed. But then, but it's part of the movement, the same movement that the party came out of. And then when the political party, the Socialist Party in Belgium, did the rebrand, they claimed the Vooruit name, which was also the name of our building and our arts center, and we couldn't really work with that, because it's too complicated to be an arts center that has the same name as one of the largest political parties in the country. So we had to look for a solution, and we didn't find one, which resulted in the name being Viernulvier. It's a pun on the 404 HTTP error.
Yeah, so for those who didn't quite catch that, Viernulvier literally translates as 404.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Because we didn't really find a good new name, so we just did the error code.
Yeah, and we're going to come on to that, because it kind of touches on the kind of creativity and the kind of experimental nature of the programming at Viernulvier, I feel. So we'll come on to that in a bit. But I first wanted to go back a little bit into your history and into how you got into the role at Viernulvier, and when you were at Bayloka before. You've worked as a supplier inside venues. Does having sat on both sides of the organizations, both as a supplier and inside venues, change the way you think about vendor relationships?
Well, I because I've worked in vendors that were exclusively working for the cultural department, for the cultural world. I try to think of vendors in the cultural sphere more as partners than as companies. It takes a certain mindset and a love for the arts as well to work in a branch like culture that has high demands and little money. It's not for everyone. So I try to be compassionate about the people that do work with us.
Yeah. And take me back to your time at Bayloka. You inherited a very traditional fixed seat subscription model there. What did you feel was wrong with that when you kind of came in and wanted to change it?
Yeah, Beluk is a large classical and jazz place, and they gave out season tickets, like you do, and season ticket holders sat in the same seat for every season for the same series of shows. So they get the new season came out, they'd buy a season ticket for a certain series, and they'd be in the same seat year on year, years on end. But even in classical music, there's quite a high rotation in your regular audience, and we had like 14 different series. So you can imagine it was basically an administrative nightmare. And also in the marketing perspective, you actively discourage people from buying more tickets outside their season ticket series. So I felt it really had to go.
And walk us through what you replaced that with and why you were confident it wouldn't alienate loyal patrons or Bayloka and the usual kind of membership buyers.
Well, we came up with a membership that allows you to buy tickets early on to take the pressure off the seats, because they like to be in certain seats for certain shows. If a piano will play, you'll see like half of the hall fill up because they all want to see the keys, and you think something's broken in your ticketing system, but it's just a piano show. But then yeah, the membership had like early buying included to take the pressure of the seats, but it also contained the season ticket discount. So the discount we would give to season ticket holders, but it would be for the whole program, and it would be valid all year. So you could accommodate late deciders or late decisions, and it's without punishing them to pay extra. And it's not as strict as in you can buy different amounts of tickets per show, because you get rid of the seats. You can bring a friend or come alone for a show if your regular partner is not interested in this. So and then we tossed in some free members events, like invitations for rehearsal days or for a premiere that would not be a full house normally. And then, classical music lovers are usually smart enough to understand that the flexibility we offered them, they offered more advantages than the old system. And because the old system had only one advantage, right? You didn't have to think about what shows you were going to see next season. But I think planning your season yourself is part of the fun for a lot of these fixed members. So yeah, they embrace it quite fast.
Would you say that's one of the mistakes that a lot of venues make when they're thinking about their membership program is flexibility? Because it sounds like in this case, you found flexibility to be one of the big drivers. And often memberships are quite strict in terms of kind of what you can see and what kind of
Yeah,
you have as a patron.
I always think these formulas where you have to you buy 2 seats in a fixed series of concerts or stuff like that. I think it's very restrictive, because you don't let the people decide on their own agenda. They have to follow your system. So yeah, I think adding flexibility can just be really, if you have the quality in your program. I mean, because a lot of the older systems are also, you try to package a couple of big shows with a couple of small shows, and it's not really something you'd accept if you go to buy a pair of shoes, for instance. So I don't know why you'd accept it when an entertainment venue treats their product like that.
Yeah. You failed to mention the numbers there, but I think they're really stark, because when we spoke about it before, you said you started with 200 members in year one, and I think by the time you were done with the changes you made, it got up to 1,200, which is an incredible increase. What was the moment you knew it was working?
Well, the 1,200 is, I think these are this year's numbers. So
Mm.
it's been, I think we implemented this, yeah, I think 4 or 5 years back, and I left short after. But I mean, they still do the same system, and it's I mean, credit to them. I mean, it runs really well. It's a great venue, and I think the whole marketing exercise was timed really well. So it would be the membership would be in place for I think for the regulars would have known it by the time the renovation of the they did a big renovation of the concert hall. Um, but then the reopening was in the middle of the COVID pandemic. But even then, when you came in to the renovated hall and we heard how good the room sounded and how great it looked, we knew people were going to fall in love with it because it's I don't know if you've been there, but it's like it's a medieval building. I think the main hall was built in 1250, so it's like an 800-year hall, but it's now it works as a state of the art um, concert venue. So it's really unique place. It has so much character, especially if you compare it to the more sterile architecture of the bigger concert buildings that host classical. Um, so yeah, once we were there and we saw the whole new setup, and you just felt it was going to work. Um, and we were by then pretty confident that the membership thing would work. I mean, the fixed seats being gone was no longer an issue at that moment.
Yeah. And you also mentioned that you started an all access pass for experimental new music shows. And that grew audiences from around 30 to 40 to around 200. And you also said it attracted a lot of traditional classical member subscribers, which is funny because there's often this perception about classical music fans being a bit traditional. But you know, your initiative there kind of dispels that myth. What did you learn from that experience?
I don't know. I think it's really about the potential and the power of contemporary music. Some of the best shows I've ever seen were like new music shows because they let you hear something that's sometimes so radically different from what you know that it has the power to like really surprise you. And I think classical music audience is aware of that. But we also know that these shows can be a bit hit or miss sometimes. So I think, yeah, I mean, there was one company in Ghent, an experimental theater company, and they had posters that said some shows will be great, some will be shit, and that's true. I mean, you know that. So if you have a formula that um, takes away the worry of will I invest my money and time into going to a show that I'll maybe not like, and you turn that around into like a no-brainer, like you're allowed in, but if I don't go today, maybe I'll miss the best show of the year. I think that's a powerful incentive, but you need to get the price right. I think it needs to be cheap enough to work, but it still needs to bring in more money than what you had before. So you, but yeah, it worked out really well with the contemporary program at the Beluga. Um, but I think it's about yeah the power of it lies in the music really rather than in the marketing around it.
Hmm. I think it kind of highlights something which we all, I feel like we all kind of instinctively know about culture lovers, music lovers, and that it's not always about the genre or seeing a specific artist. Obviously, sometimes we all want to see our favorite band, but I think we're all open to new experiences too. But it's just like you say, having that incentive, having something which makes seeing something new more accessible and less risky, you could say. And I guess that's what that initiative does, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And you said something in our prep calls as well that I want to come back to, in that people sometimes don't come to classical concerts just for the music itself. They're coming for an emotional connection. And this kind of ties into your initiative about kind of helping people open up to new experiences, and that people are open to new things. They do want to kind of, they're not that interested in kind of what's being shown. They just want to have an emotional connection. And I think perhaps this is one of the reasons why the all access pass scheme was so successful at Bayloka. But what does this tell us about our audiences and what they are looking to gain from attending arts and culture events?
That's a very broad question, but if we look at Viernulvier now, I think the decision process on whether or not you will want to come to a show in the theater and dance crowd will be very different from the decision process in the nightlife crowd. But underneath what they're looking for, I think everyone shares the need for like the emotional and physical connection that comes from being in the same room together with the artist or the DJ or the band and each other. So I think that's a lot of it has to do about emotional connection and being together more than what's actually being on stage.
And is that something that Viernulvier implements in your marketing in terms of like not necessarily always focusing too much on kind of the genre or the artist, but sometimes it is about marketing that, you know, you're coming here to build connections, maybe to meet people, you know, that kind of stuff.
Well, I like to go to our own shows and see what I like or I don't like about it, and talk to a few people and find out why they're there. And then in general, I think it's good to focus on accessibility of the program, as well as as of the space itself. You know, your shows should be original and say something to you about um, whether you want to go or not. But and then accessibility of your space is also, I think, really important. If you look at busy venue nights, you want to get rid of like unnecessary queues for drink tickets. Or at Viernulvier, we've implemented a pay what you can pricing for a lot of the shows. For most of the shows, we host ourselves, so people can choose their own discounts if they're short on money, and then or pay something extra if they're willing. And the second thing really is the originality of the stuff you do. People tend to remember the extraordinary things better. Um, I remember, for example, a cinema evening we did with Viernulvier, but it was for canoes on the canals in the city outside, and we had an artist, Mark Poslep is his name. Is a very poetic DIY kind of artist, and he built a steel boat that he made a campfire in on the water, and then you paddled out behind his boat, and you tie all the boats together around the campfire boat, and then you'd watch a movie together, like floating on the water. So if you have evenings like this, you tend to remember them. Those are stuff you forget, and you want to come back to the next kind of show that's going to be on. So I think a lot of the marketing is really secondary to the stuff you offer, and if you can offer people like original new experiences, it helps you so much in your work.
That sounds so cool. It's like a very different kind of outdoor cinema, but something I'd definitely love to try one day.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah.
I'd like to come back to something you said a bit earlier about the pay what you can pricing, which sounds really interesting. I mean, a lot of people might be quite familiar with this. Is you see it a little bit in the gaming industry. Fans of Bandcamp have been kind of using this model for a very long time for, you know, DIY artists. But I'm interested, how does an organization like Viernulvier contend with a pay what you can pricing when, and you know, how do you manage that from a kind of revenue perspective?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's yeah, there's lots of ins and outs. It's very difficult. We can't do it for the music, for the concert part of the agenda, because concert programmers are very focused on like ticket pricing and how much revenue you're going to generate. But I think it's not really pay what you can. You can't you can't really come in free and pay nothing really. But it's more like choose your own discount. So we just open up the regular discount levels we would have for a certain show, and we basically let people choose. And it takes the idea away of you'd have to be over 65 to get like the senior discount, or you have to be under 24 to get the junior discount, or you have to be, I don't know. There's always these different demands for you to get the discount, and we just took them away so people can really book their own. It's very different from the situation at the Belgium where you use price as an incentive, but we just let people choose, and we did that for a couple of shows, and then evaluated how the revenue was, and then you could actually tell that the revenue of like open discount choice is more or less the same as what you would get if you just use your regular discount system. It's not very different at all. People, yeah, it's very predictable now. We know, we can tell if we put the pay what you can levels at these price points. You basically know the percentages beforehand.
People might be really surprised by that because when people hear kind of pay what you can pricing, they immediately assume that everyone just wants to pay as little as possible and
It's
that
yeah,
profit's going to be hit. But there's been many studies around this that's shown that that's not the
yeah,
case. Sometimes revenue will be higher than if you have
yeah,
fixed
yeah.
pricing. What do you think this tells us about culture lovers and live event ticket buyers?
Yeah, I think they're very. It depends on how high your prices are, though, and
Mm,
then how far the levels are apart. But if you do it like choose your own discount system, it's very predictable. It's about half of the people that will choose the cheapest option, and then you have, but that is compensated by the people that choose to pay something extra. So I think that people do value culture as, because I mean, it's a lot of work, and getting a show on stage is an expensive thing, especially if you have like a dance company or an orchestra playing, and people do realize that, and they tend to be fair.
mm.
So I don't think there's this. It's not the same decision process as you would do for if you go to the supermarket and have two identical products and one is cheaper than the other. It's a different thing entirely.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I think that's what people often forget about when they're buying, a ticket to an event compared to, buying your groceries. You're buying something you already have an emotional connection with. And I know on Bandcamp, people know with pay what you can. In a way, it's almost like, if you love an artist, it's almost like you can actually pay more to support them. And that's what a lot of people have found with pay what you can pricing. So it is a very different relationship to kind of pricing and cost. Um, and it sounds like it's something that a lot of other organizations should perhaps experiment with. How would you say people should go about starting a pay what you can pricing for, a small part of their program?
Well, you just do the numbers really. If you know that, I think roughly, I would say, if you take all the pay what you can tickets, you'll see half of the people, like 50%, will choose the cheapest one, and then another 35 will choose the middle one, because we just put out three prices, so you can have a discount, you can pay the regular price, or you can pay something extra. And it's about 35 of the people that'll go, a percent of the people that'll go for the regular one, and then 15% will pay something extra. And just do the maths, and make a spreadsheet, and download all the tickets, because you'll be surprised of how many discounted tickets you're selling in your current system. You'll have your season ticket holders, you have your all plus 65, minus 25, all your discounts. You'll have like card holders, you have all kinds of stuff. So if you add them all up, and put the prices in there, and then check the total revenue, and then do the same exercise with the split I just gave, like the 50, 35, 15 split, and then put the pricing in there and get your prices right for to like try to match the revenue, you won't be far off of what you'll be selling in reality. So yeah, but I think it takes a little bit of getting used to the thought process, and you do lose a lot of like you have to sacrifice a lot of discount mechanics in your marketing in order to do pay what you can. So it's more like it's not a very easy choice to make, and it's a viable one if you're up for it.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like something some organizations can think about and perhaps
Mm.
try in their next season. I'd like to come on to digital technology and in-house knowledge now. You said before that there's no such thing as a CTO in Belgian arts and culture. I don't really have come across a CTO in any arts and culture in the UK and the US either. And I don't think any of us are saying that culture organizations should start hiring a CTO. I don't think that's necessarily a necessity right now. But it does highlight that technology isn't always such a strong priority for many venues. As a digital strategist yourself, what do cultural organizations gain from hiring highly technical roles such as yours to their organization?
Yeah, it's a big topic for me. I always try to encourage other venues to get some technical people on board. About myself, I like to think that I can offer a sense of direction sometimes when it comes to what parts of the processes should we be investing in when it comes to digital solutions, because there's a lot to be gained from zooming out of like the questions like, do we need a new website or do we need a new ticketing and planning system, which everybody has every now and again. And then I try to boil down these questions to what problem are we actually trying to solve here, and it's often very different than the starting point from we need a new website. But if you really try to pin down where that question comes from, you can it's often turns out that you need something else entirely, really.
And obviously, with you at Viernulvier, there's some technical knowledge in house there. And a lot of venues do have have ticketing and CRM kind of experts. Um, but is there more kind of technical knowledge that venues should be bringing in house?
Well, it really depends on your setup, and it'll be different for every venue. I mean, we do our own system administration. We don't have like a company that does it for us. Our company is also our building is also building management is also in house. So we own our own building, and we have to like do from Wi-Fi to the plumbing. It's all on us really. So we need good systems to keep track of that. Um, but I think if you look at software or IT, I think it's really good to have some understanding in house on an architectural level of the software. Um, if you're able to come up with like a solid data flow for your day to day work, that really matters more than who eventually will build the tools to facilitate it. I've seen really impressive and performant workflows developed with very primitive tooling from like Google Docs or Excel, being very efficiently used to mega budget projects that fail miserably. So if you're able to understand what you need architecturally and finding out what problems you're trying to solve, that's often the hardest part. And once you know what you're trying to solve, usually someone has built a solution for it already. And then it comes down to whether you can afford to buy it or you need to look to another solution to work around that. Um, that's a whole different thing. I mean, anybody can. I mean, not anybody, but you'll be able to work that out in the end. But the hard part is asking the right questions and having a look at what data are we managing, where does it come from, where does it need to go, who needs to know what, and making that organization drawing like in a data model. I think that's that's something every venue should at least try to do in-house.
Yeah, it's quite a common theme, that kind of asking the why question being quite important. And you mentioned data there. I think we all know now that cultural organizations ingest a vast amount of audience data, and we all know there's a lot of potential there. So would you say kind of getting stuck in the weeds of data, wanting to understand how that data is being processed through the organization, how you can kind of follow it through with your audiences, that's potentially one of the biggest areas for kind of potential growth within culture organizations?
Yep, maybe, but it's also because when you start these discussions, often you'll get into real big CRM schemes and marketing and automation and all that. But I think a lot of the gains are also in the smaller. Don't really necessitate really big systems. I think UX is really key. And getting the online intel you have to be correct is really important. You want people to be able to act on a hunch and like buy a ticket and without real effort, but also have your for example, your Google business profile up to date with the right opening times during the holidays. I mean, that will probably gain you as many customers as you would gain from like a really big marketing campaign. So it can be really. I think people tend to get stuck in complex technical thought processes or projects, and then you tend to keep you take your eye off the ball really, and then you start to do stuff that maybe not produces the big gains, or I don't know. You probably know what I'm getting at, but I'm getting kind of lost here.
Yeah. The foundations are very important, aren't they? I think people can think that digital and technology projects are these big, massive projects that you need to really get stuck into and requires a huge amount of expertise. But yeah, like you say, there's a lot of simple stuff that people could potentially be doing at their venues.
Yeah. And if you do the simple stuff right, I mean, it's usually a really solid foundation to go like little steps further and try to improve what you're doing. But yeah, like a magical solution of like we should collect all or like process all this data and then something magical will happen and we'll sell more tickets. I don't really buy that kind of story. It's more in like respecting your customers and giving them the right information to act on. I think that's more important than which system you're using to send the emails with.
Yeah, and that's probably something that's a good thing to keep in mind with the emergence of AI. And there's a lot of like pressure for organizations to start using AI more. But like you say, just going back to basics, thinking about your audiences is probably a better way to start thinking about it rather than jumping into new sparkly toys.
Oh yeah, and yeah, keep also if you're going down the AI route with the customer data, I mean that's pretty tricky, and you better know what you're doing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just looking ahead now for what the next kind of digital or technical problem is that you're trying to solve at Viernulvier.
Yeah, it's a very basic one. It's volunteer planning is my next or my current project, because there's a lot of people planning tools out there in the market, but they're usually very expensive, full-featured HR software suites. All the very, very small tools that lack integration endpoints to connect to the venue planning system. So we decided to build an in-house app that just does volunteer planning and that just does what it needs to do and nothing extra, but it is integrated with our venue planning. And introducing this new setup is coming up next month, so it'll be a good UX check to see if it works with volunteers to offer them, because they'll basically have an app, or it's a web app they can log into and then see what shifts we're looking for to fill up with volunteer labor, so to speak, and they can put in their availabilities, and then a planner can plan them, and then they get updates on when they're planned. So that's the next big thing. It's very practical problem solving, really.
Yeah. Well, we look forward to seeing that next month then.
Yeah, me too, really.
Cool. Well, that's it for now. So yeah, thanks very much for your time, Karel. That was great.
Yeah, no worries. My pleasure.
That's it for today's episode of CultureTalk. A huge thanks to Karel Lievens for taking us through his work in Viernulvier and the lessons from his time at Belgium. A few things stood out to me from this conversation. The work that Karel did rebuilding Belgium's membership model, taking it from a rigid fixed seat subscription system to a flexible membership that grew from 200 to around 1,200 members, is remarkable. And it really shows what potential there is to kind of grow things like membership programs. And the pay what you can model at Viernulvier is really interesting to me, something that I've been really familiar as a Bandcamp user for a long time. And I think it's something that a lot of venues should at least think about, if not try. But thanks again for listening to CultureTalk. If you enjoyed this episode, do hit the follow or subscribe button to get more conversations like this one. Other than that, take care, and we'll catch you next time.